Hey there, this is Evan J Kopelson, your host. You can call me Ev, and we are back for an impromptu episode of Evan Talks on Facebook Live tonight. Tonight we are talking about censorship and fear-mongering in this COVID-19 era of fascism that we're living right now. So there is a war on communication. There's a war on your ability to hear any information that goes against the narrative, particularly about the COVID-19 narrative. Now, last night we had a movie night where I showed the documentary by Mickey Willis called Plandemic. And the featured expert interview was Dr. Judy Mikovits. And all day long today, there has been a war. So first of all, the show was great last night. Thankfully, I have a recording because Facebook censored and pulled down my video replay not 5 minutes after the live show was ended. So there is either an algorithm around there that can recognize the banned content was included in my broadcast, or somebody reported the broadcast as including this offensive material. But in any case, I find it really curious that the powers that be are working really hard right now to make sure certain information is not able to be disseminated. And so last week there was a joint announcement made by the big social platforms, or as they've been called more recently, more accurately, socialist platforms: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and there was a fifth. It could be Pinterest, but if it's not, I don't want to be inaccurate, but it's definitely those four. And they have all come out together in a joint statement to say that they are going to censor and remove any information that questions the WHO, who has been caught lying to us countless times about COVID-19. First, they told us that the virus could not be spread from person to person. Then they changed their story 5 or 6 times about masks. Now they're saying we should be wearing masks at all times, even outdoors, which is incredibly unhealthy. And so I want to talk today from a number of perspectives about why it's so important to the powers that be to censor us. So today on my Facebook profile, I posted some notes about yesterday. I'm also looking for alternative platforms where my content won't be censored. The problem is a lot of my audience isn't sure where they stand on this, okay? I've got a lot of friends who consider themselves awake or in the process of awakening. And I have a lot of friends who are very happy in the matrix that they're in. It works for them. They did everything they were supposed to do. They have all of the privileges of the elite class. And why should I be rocking the boat? So then there's a lot of people in the middle, right? And so where I'm coming from, and this is really important to clarify this, I don't have a stake in anyone's personal opinion. I'm doing this because I'm seeing in my own observations, and I only speak for myself, and I've said this several times, people love to come on my Facebook profile and accuse me of having ulterior motives or selfish motives for doing this show. And I just want to say, I don't know what those selfish motives can be. Selfishly, I want to know what is going on in the world, and I want to know that I have the information that I need to make informed decisions about my own life and my own health. However, according to a lot of people who are kind of eating the sheep food, and they really don't like it when people like me come around and rock the boat, they want to use words like selfish, like I'm being selfish. And the protesters who are protesting to get back to work are being selfish. So right now, I have this danger sign up because you are being conditioned, you and me and everyone, to view our freedom as selfish. So if we want to protest against draconian overreaches of government, lockdowns and restrictions and forced closures of our businesses and the loss of our jobs, If you want to speak out against that, you are now selfish. Okay. And then if you're like me and you want to ask questions and explore things maybe from a deeper level or a few different angles than they're telling us on the news, then you have to be censored and silenced. Okay. So that's what's happening to me. So I find it very curious. And this is why I want everyone who's with me tonight on this replay, following me on my, social media, wherever you are, I want you to kind of assess where you stand here and where you are in the trajectory, right, of someone who's perfectly happy with the status quo and eating the sheep food and wants to help silence everyone who speaks out. That's the one side of the spectrum. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there are people who are leading the charge. So those are people who are doing the investigative journalism and making and posting the videos, interviewing experts like Dr. Mikovits and videos like from Dr. Rashid Buttar. Those are leaders on the resistance movement against totalitarianism, okay, and authoritarianism in the form of draconian overreaches of government power and restrictions to personal freedoms, restrictions to freedom of movement, restrictions to First Amendment rights of assembly, of free speech, of religious practice. Anyone who is putting out information and being a content creator and sharing information that counters the official narrative that makes people afraid and want to wear masks outdoors and want to submit to these indoctrination rituals that are being thrust on us for the most part by unelected health officials and then adopted by power-hungry elected officials that are using these 5 minutes of fame that they're getting to grab power, restrict the rights, and act like dictators. So on the other end of the spectrum, there's people like filmmaker Mickey Willis and Judy Mikovits, PhD, who's coming out and telling their stories, okay? And then I consider myself, Evan J Kopelson, Evan Talks, as like basically somewhere kind of in the middle. I am not leading the charge by any means in finding out this information from the firsthand sources. I'm hearing it. I'm seeing a lot of different materials that kind of support each other, even though they're coming from different sources, information that tends to confirm what I'm hearing in other bits of information. And then I'm coming on these shows to talk about it with you. Okay, so do you see the difference? Like, I'm not making these stories and breaking them. I'm looking at them and then wanting to talk about them because I watch the news, and no matter what news channel I watch, left wing, right wing, whatever it is, they're still not really talking about these issues. And they're not talking about them from the perspectives that I feel are the most important for us. So I'm coming here to talk about those. And if that makes me selfish, then I guess I'm very selfish for wanting to know that information. But from some of the comments that I get, okay, so let me turn off this danger sign because I have to take you down the vortex and remind you that everything that you hear on this show is possibly conspiracy theory and wild conspiracies based in nothing at all. And you are very irresponsible for watching. You are irresponsible for listening. And if you ask any of the same questions that I ask, and incidentally, the questions that I ask are the same questions that some of the other people who have banned content are asking. So if I'm asking those questions, it makes me a threat and they have to remove my videos. If you ask the same questions that I ask, then you're even possibly more irresponsible than me. And I think all of us should be ashamed of ourselves for how selfish we are for wanting to understand why all of the businesses in the country, except the billionaire-run businesses, had to close. And that is incredibly selfish of us. And how dare you and how dare I want to know why these rules are in place that make no sense whatsoever from a medical perspective, from a health perspective, from a common sense perspective. And so you bet we have questions. And if we're asking them and we are selfish, there are people out there who are terrified. And when we ask these questions, it really upsets the apple cart, okay? And so we are being conditioned to view our freedom itself as selfish. And our efforts to secure it, to protect it, to defend it are all selfish, okay? So I hope I've laid the groundwork there. What I want to do right now, to lighten it up a little bit, actually, is to watch this great, funny video from JP Sears, who I love, who just happened to publish this video yesterday called What It's Like to Believe Everything the Media Tells You. Okay, so I want to give a shout out to my brother, Jeff Bond, for sending me this video. Someone sent it to me yesterday, so I know I'm going to get a nasty message like, hey, I sent you that yesterday, and you didn't call me out. So I'm sorry if I find it. Someone else sent it to me yesterday, okay? So I'm giving you credit right now. Jeff, you weren't the first. But let's go ahead and watch this video. It's kind of funny, and it'll lighten things up a little bit, and then we can continue the conversation, okay? So here is JP Sears, one of the funniest guys around. Super sharp.
People are freaking out right now. Like, they're tired of having their constitutional rights taken away with a mandatory stay-at-home orders. Cities are suing the California governor so their people can go back onto their beaches again. Idiots. Like, I'll stay at home for the rest of my life if they tell me to. Who knows how to make the best choices for my health and my life? Definitely not me. So I'm more than happy to put my blind trust in power-hungry politicians and definitely uncorrupt groups like the World Health Organization. I think they know what's best for me because, like, they know me better than I know me. The last thing you want is people to have the freedom to make their own choices and then experience the consequences of their choices. I think free will is a little bit of a sin. I don't think we should have it in the first place. Like, you wouldn't give a razor blade to a 3-year-old because it wouldn't be in their best interest. So you shouldn't give freedom to people either. All these Americans that want their freedoms are just ungrateful. I say, if you don't like how things are going and you just want your freedom, then why don't you move to a free country like North Korea or Venezuela, you freaking heathens? Oh, I 100% buy into the narrative they tell me. I think it's ludicrous some people don't 100% believe the narrative like it's the absolute truth. Why wouldn't you? Think about it. If you were in charge of a giant, powerful business that pretends it's a charity like the World Health Organization, you wouldn't spend your time carefully crafting your message to manufacture consent with the public to get them to go along with your mysterious agenda that's in your best interest that you tell them is in their best interest. You'd probably just get up to the podium and have a spontaneous conversation and see what comes out of your mouth while you're riffing. I think that's what they're doing. That's why when Trump gets up there and talks about things like injecting Lysol, it seems so out of the ordinary because he spends months carefully crafting his message. I also find the more scared I am, the more unwilling I am to believe anything other than the original narrative that they told me that they're still telling me, even when new, more accurate information emerges. Like when USC did research in LA County a few weeks ago and showed the amount of people infected with COVID-19 is 28 to 55 times more than we originally thought. Yep, because most of these people don't have symptoms, it suggests the infection is far less dangerous than we originally thought. And in contrast to the original guesstimation of a death rate of 4.5% in COVID cases, the LA County Health Department says the new research suggests the actual death rate in COVID cases is between 0.1 and 0.2%. That means the actual death rate in COVID-19 cases is 22.5 to 45 times less deadly than we were originally told. But this new scientific data is irrelevant to me because it's like I already made up my mind when I was the most frightened. And I'm going to keep believing what makes me the most frightened because it just feels more congruent in my being that way. I'll also spend a lot of time looking for information that they shove in my face that confirms my existing beliefs. There's nothing like a little confirmation bias to help my mind continue to learn and expand. I'm also really good at believing the COVID death count, as anyone who is diagnosed with COVID-19 and then dies, irregardless of what they die from, pre-existing condition or otherwise, their death is labeled a COVID death. Makes sense to me. Instead of letting the doctor who is treating the patient use their medical education to determine the cause of death, I think the mandate to label it a COVID death is more accurate. And it helps the COVID death count get higher than it is. And the higher it is, the more scared I am. And the more scared I am, the more obedient I am. Yes, I would like a mandatory vaccine. I'm scared enough that I think more things should be mandatory. Sometimes the best medicine is like the best sex, non-consensual. They work on the same premise. But I'll tell you this, those vaccines better be brought to market without long-term human trials. And I think it will be. It's better that way because the long-term trials that prove a vaccine's safety and effectiveness are pretty arrogant. It's just like, hey, let's spend years rubbing it in your face how great this thing is. I say it's better to just be humble and forgo that bragging period. It's pretty well proven that being proactive and taking care of your health won't keep you healthy. Our only hope is in the pharmaceutical companies protecting us. They have a very good track record of never harming anyone, so I sleep pretty good at night. I'm also kind of asleep right now. And yes, I would like to be microchipped as long as they tell me it's for my own good. And I apologize if I'm being a little too greedy here, but I'd like 2 microchips, please, just to keep me extra safe. Or maybe we should just do a baby step and use mandatory tracking apps on our phone first to keep us safe, and then go to the microchips. I think that's probably the way to go. I'll tell you who I trust more than God, Bill Gates, because he's got more money than God. Money can't buy happiness, but it can definitely buy my trust. I accurately look at Bill Gates as a medical authority when it comes to vaccines and being undiseased because he's a software engineer, not a doctor. He doesn't have a medical degree or any other degree for that matter, which means he's not part of the corrupt medical system because he doesn't have any medical training, which means he knows more about medicine than medical professionals. Like when my child's sick, I don't take him to a doctor. I take him to the Apple store to have a computer engineer take a look at him. I'm not an idiot. Bill not only has my trust because he wears sweaters over collared shirts, but also because of how he found the path of altruism that he's on. Think about his journey. In 1999, he was sued by the federal government and found guilty of breaking antitrust laws because he created a monopoly with Microsoft, presumably because he's so power hungry for control and domination. Then the very next year in 2000, he founded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which now controls the World Health Organization, which is spearheading the charge to narrate to us what's going on with the coronavirus and the race to find a vaccine to cure it. He miraculously switched from being such a power-hungry Microsoft overlord breaking laws to the extent that the US government had to sue him, to just 1 year later with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation being such a shining example of altruism that he selflessly cared so much that he made it his mission to rid the world of disease with vaccines. Sounds like he found Jesus to me. There's no other explanation. Oh, and get this. This one time, a friend of mine who's obviously a conspiracy theorist who needs to be medicated had this outrageous theory that after he was found guilty in 1999 of breaking antitrust laws, Bill Gates realized that Microsoft could no longer be the vehicle that he used to gain more power and control, so he founded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation the next year to be the new vehicle for him to gain more power and control. And he even said Bill is smart enough to make the vehicle appear as though he's using it to help the world, even though he's just using it to take over more of the world, which would make the world help him take more of their power and control. So crazy. I was like, bro, He's not that smart. He's a billionaire, not a trillionaire. The mainstream narrative helps me classify anyone that doesn't go along with its narrative as an irresponsible lunatic conspiracy theorist. That way I can label them as crazy rather than thinking about what they're saying. So, my friend's a crazy lunatic. Thinking for yourself and making your own choices is dangerous during a time like this. Is that a blue pill?
Okay, so that was JP Sears' take. And look, yesterday, actually, let me give a shout out to everybody who's here. If you're still here, James, Melissa, Brad, Edgar, Candy, Michael, Dawn, Carrie, how are you? I'm so glad you're here. If you have questions for me or want to say hi, I just said hi. I'm really glad to see you all. You probably came for JP, but that's okay. I won't take it personal. So yesterday, look, he ended talking about Bill Gates. I don't know. I see a lot of people here today that haven't been here on my more recent ones. So I think it would help if I show you this clip that I've been showing in my last couple of shows. Just a minute and a half of Bill Gates. Hold on one second. This is Bill Gates talking to Chris Anderson from TED Talks. Okay, I'm going to skip the first 30 seconds. You can go back and get it. You just search for Bill Gates with Chris Anderson. This is a minute and a half. I'm going to show you where Bill Gates is telling Chris Anderson that he doesn't want to see a lot of recovered people from Corona because recovered people will actually create a herd immunity. He doesn't actually say that. But if there's too many people who recover, then the whole society is going to recover and the virus is going to go away. What Bill Gates is saying here to Chris, who doesn't even bat an eye, which I find very interesting, is that Bill is happy that the economic hardship that we're all experiencing is happening now because it's forcing us into a depressed state where we're stuck at home and we have no hope. And it's keeping artificially low the number of infections because of this whole flatten the curve thing they sold to us. So now they want that to go on indefinitely because if they keep us home long enough, they can continue indoctrinating and brainwashing us that the only way out is through a vaccine. Okay. And what happens after the vaccine is even more alarming. And this is why I keep coming here and doing these shows for the last 2 weeks, because totalitarianism is pounding at our door, not knocking. And so after the vaccine that they're selling as the only way out is this contact tracing, which is actually mass surveillance of a likes of which we've never seen. So let me show you this video, and then I've got a couple comments on that I'll pop in after.
You don't need it for that, but you're right. Recovered people are kind of magical. And, you know, for key jobs, even where you might have some exposure, you know, it might be useful. Now, we don't want to have a lot of recovered people. You know, to be clear, we're trying through the shutdown in the United States to not get to 1% of the population infected. We're well below that today, but with exponentiation, you know, you could get past that 3 million. I believe we will be able to avoid that with the having this economic pain. Eventually, what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who's a vaccinated person, because you don't want people moving around the world where you'll have some countries that won't have it under control. Sadly, you don't want to completely block off the ability for those, you know, people to go there and come back and move around. So eventually there will be sort of this digital immunity proof that, you know, will help facilitate the global reopening up.
Okay, so I hope there wasn't feedback. I forgot to mute my mic on that one, so I hope you were able to hear that okay. But let me just go through briefly what he said. First, he said we don't want to see a lot of recovered people. Then he's saying we want to keep the overall infection rate down below 1% in the United States. So that's 3 million people out of about 350 million people in the United States. So he's saying that if we don't watch what we're doing, we're going to have more than 1% of the population be infected. And we already know there's over a 90% cure rate and recovery rate for COVID-19. So what he's saying is if enough people get COVID, too many people are going to recover from COVID. And what he's saying at the beginning was we don't want to see a lot of recovered people. Some of them might be nice to do these essential jobs, he's saying. But we don't want to see a lot because the reason is if we do see a lot of recovered people, it means that we're not going to need a vaccine endgame because it's going to take care of itself. So then he went on to say he believes that we will be able to keep this artificially down to, below that 1% number through the economic pain that he's saying and the economic hardship. So I hope that you guys can kind of piece this together. It's a short clip, so I keep playing it in my episodes because I want people to see this clip and start reading between the lines, okay? They are doing this on purpose so they can get us to want the vaccine. Now, I posted a funny little accordion video the other day with a song, and I said it's a message from the vaccine industry. I encourage you to go to my page and watch that. I'll show it again in another episode. I'm not going to watch it tonight, but the basic gist of it is they're going to vax you. They're going to track you. They're going to know everywhere you go. They're going to know everyone you talk to, and they're going to know everyone you meet with. And they're calling that contact tracing. Now, contact tracing, it's another lie they're telling us, okay? So contact tracing is a real thing, but where it's employed in a virus, in a pandemic or outbreak, is only right at the incredible very beginning. In the earliest stages of an outbreak, you can do contact tracing to find, like, I'm sure you've heard of Typhoid Mary, right? That old story of that person, the first person who had typhus and gave it to a lot of people. So, like, contact tracing is helpful if you can find the beginning of an outbreak, like the technician at the Wuhan laboratory who contracted this virus or got infected with it through, one means or the other, and then went and infected, I think her boyfriend or his girlfriend, however that worked, and then it went and spread to other people. So, like, if we could have found them then, if China wasn't locking us out of being able to go there, we might have been able to do contact tracing then and find the original person who had it and the 5 or 6 people she came in contact with, and then be able to test them and isolate them. That's what contact tracing is. But what they're saying it is now is a total lie. Like, it's the same thing, but when you do it now, late in the game, where there's up to 15% of the population possibly has already been infected with COVID. A lot of people don't even know they had it or they've recovered from it. It won't tell you anything, the contact tracing. What they're talking about is totalitarianism. It's authoritarianism. It's like Gestapo time. It's the Ventura guys who came on yesterday or a few days ago and said that they're going to enter your house, they're going to test all of you, and if they might remove some of you to another facility. So that's what they're saying is contact tracing. It's really mass surveillance, and it's totalitarianism to be able to remove you forcibly from your home, from your family. And so I showed a bunch of these in my prior episodes. So far, movie night last night was removed, but my other episodes are up. So I encourage you, if you're here tonight, if you're just listening to this, if you're not sure where I'm coming from, please check out my COVID lockdown review and my Vax and Track Agenda shows. So there's 3 or 4 of them right now that will tell you a lot and show you a lot more of kind of what I'm touching on here. So I want to get back to censorship because yesterday I got sent another video that I watched before I went to sleep, and I'm kicking myself now that I didn't download it into my vault for security because it's already been censored by YouTube. And this one is really surprising to me because when I saw it, it almost caused me to back off the ledge a little bit. And some of the people that I know are telling me that, they think I'm an alarmist. And again, I don't think I'm an alarmist because I've been hearing about a lot of this stuff for a long time, and I've been more on the other side saying, that sounds a little much, and I think that's a little much. And like the New World Order and the global police and the, above government level. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. It sounds intriguing. And I worked in the movie business for a long time, but I don't know about that. But now, with these draconian lockdowns, with clear constitutional violations, with power-hungry politicians and weird orders that don't make any sense at all, that totally contradict between what's allowed and what's not allowed, totally contradict each other. And I think a lot of people in California, a lot of people across the country have had enough. So yesterday, I saw this video, and I'll show you because I posted it on my Facebook profile. Okay, so I'm going to show you my Facebook profile. Okay, and this is what I posted. Okay, and I summarized it a little bit. This is the cop right here. You can see he's in his police uniform and he's in his police vehicle. And this, it was called Coronavirus, a pissed off good cop speaks out. Okay, and I summarized what he said, and I'll read what I wrote here. One brave cop schools all the others. And I put this in quotes. This isn't a direct 100% quote, but he did say all these things. I just don't know if he said them in exactly this order. And I didn't get the exact wording right, but he said all of these things, and I'm not paraphrasing for him. I'm really trying my best to remember exactly what he said. So he said, look, no matter what your chain of command tells you, no matter what a mayor says or a governor says, we do not have the right. And he's talking to other police, and he says, look, I'm a police officer, and this video is for other police officers. He says that right at the beginning. So he says, no matter what a mayor or a governor says, or no matter what someone in your chain of command, even if it's your own boss, tells you, we, police officers, do not have the right or the authority to trample on people's constitutional rights to free assembly, to worship at churches, to go to parks with their families. But he says, I'm seeing other police officers doing this and trampling on people's constitutional rights and arresting peaceful people for doing things that are perfectly legal. So he says, I'm telling you, there's going to be blood in the streets. And if you want to see blood in the streets, keep trampling on people's rights. He's talking to other cops. He says, because the American spirit of defiance is going to rise again, and we're going to lose our power to enforce these laws in about 10 minutes after the people decide they've had enough. Now, when I saw this, it really made me feel good about police, especially this one. I'd love to talk to this guy. If anyone knows this guy or knows how to get in touch with him, please have him get in touch with me. I would be so happy to interview him on this show. So let me show you what happens now when you click this link, right? Want to watch this video. Click it to YouTube. Let's see what happens. Maybe they put it back. Oh, snap. Video unavailable. This video is no longer available because the YouTube account associated with this video has been terminated. So not only did they pull his video, but they terminated his account. How dare an officer of the law remind other officers of the law what their actual rights, duties, and limitations to their power are? How dare he? And again, actually, I should say, if you're watching, Mr. Police Officer, anything, how dare you speak from your conscience? How dare you tell other police officers what their obligations and duties are? And it sounds like you have a conscience. And if you're asking me, Mr. Police Officer, I think you have a conscience that is very selfish, actually. It's very selfish of you to speak out your own thoughts and feelings when you should be going along with the narrative and enforcing these draconian things against people, against peaceful people. So another thing the cop was saying was that they're releasing violent criminals from prison, ostensibly under the fear that they'll get infected with COVID, and then they're arresting peaceful people going to the park with their friends or opening their businesses. You may have heard of the woman in Texas who was arrested and put in jail for refusing to apologize for opening her business. And the judge, by the way, Democrat activist judge in Texas, who is up for re-election in November, told this wonderful woman that she needed to apologize to the authorities for opening her business and said that she was selfish. Again, that's the key word for today with totalitarianism and authoritarianism, is she was selfish. And this incredible woman stood up to this idiot judge and said, "Excuse me, sir, but if it's selfish for me to want to feed my family and bring my employees to work so they can feed their families, I don't think that's selfish. I refuse to apologize. And if you're going to lock me up, lock me up." This idiot judge locked up this business owner woman, and the lieutenant governor of Texas promptly offered to pay the $7,000 in fines that she was charged and to go into house arrest himself so that this woman could go to work. The next day, the Supreme Court in Texas ordered her released, and she's now been released. And the governor revised his orders and scolded this judge and said that he never intended his orders to result in the type of result that resulted. And so, in fact, some of these cases against business owners have been thrown out of court or dropped already, because truly there is no right or authority that gives anyone the right or the power to order that you close your business and that others get to stay open. It's just not constitutional. It's not right. And there are lower courts that are upholding, like some of these bans. A California lower federal court has upheld recently church closure orders. Now, I think that the lawyers who argued that case did a bad job. Frankly, and when you argue legal cases, unfortunately, you can get yourself into some trouble if you don't argue the right way. So my advice to the lawyers that fucked up that case is that they made a comparison between alcohol and weed stores being called essential businesses and churches not being called essential businesses. And what that did was it opened the door for the judge and the other side to say, you know what, that's not a proper analogy, because retail establishments are stores where people go to buy specific items, whereas churches are places where people go to assemble and congregate, and they're not the same. And so what I think the lawyers should have argued, and hopefully will argue on appeal, is that First Amendment religious freedom is a constitutional right guaranteed by the Bill of Rights. And it's not just seeking to congregate and assemble that people want to do in the church. They're seeking to practice their religion and to worship God. And there is no law of man that is allowed to limit the right of somebody to worship God, especially not here in America. That's how it's built. So from a constitutional perspective, I'm almost sure that that lower court ruling is going to be overturned. But it heartened me to see a good cop talking to other cops and saying, hey, we have to check our authority here. And there have been sheriffs who refuse to enforce these draconian laws, and have some of, I think a congressman in Michigan just filed a lawsuit finally against this power-grubbing bitch, Whitmer in Michigan, who stops people from going to between their own homes or visiting their families. Or when you go to the superstore, some of the aisles are closed because she's deemed that you can't get items that she doesn't want you to have. You can't buy food seeds and you can't buy paint for your house, even though you're supposed to stay at home for months. So why not paint your house or plant a garden? Well, you can't do that because that idiot in charge has told you that it's not essential. If you want to get those things, you're selfish. Do you see what I'm saying? And you're putting people's lives at risk, even though from a medical perspective, there's absolutely no reason or logic in those rules. So here's a cop that came and spoke out and got his YouTube account taken down. Okay, so that brings us to where we sit, where I was yesterday, where I am today, where there's a lot of information out there on the internet, and I'm looking at some of it, and a lot of it is questioning the narrative that's being shoved down our throats. And there's a lot that I've shown you that already demonstrates the end game for the powers that be. This is Bill Gates, who controls the WHO, the CDC, who's also in his pocket, and the CDC is basically a vaccine company. They're not out for your public health. Like the way that the public is misinformed about these agencies and what their purposes are to make money, and they're not to protect our health. And so there's an end game at play. Everyone who has information that counters the narrative is being censored. And that brings me to the real point of the show today. The show today is not about trying to prove anything or show anything. It's asking the questions: why are we being censored? Why are we not allowed to see information? Now, when I went through my legal background with you and my constitutional law background, I showed you my professor, my constitutional law professor, Nadine Strawson, who was the head of the ACLU for 20 years and a book author. And one of the books that she wrote is called Hate: Why We Should Counter It with or Fight It with Free Speech and Not Censorship. Another book she wrote was Defending Pornography. So, like, constitutionally, constitutional rights exist at the borders, at the edges of what we consider to be appropriate or even something that we like. And so when our rights are limited, they are limited for everyone, and it's like a domino effect that'll cascade down. So like the main tenet of constitutional law and free speech is that, okay, so if you have wrong speech, hate speech, false facts, people conspiracies, or spreading lies, disinformation, theories, all of that stuff, the tenet of constitutional law and free speech says you don't fight that the way communist China fights it, or the way that communist Russia used to fight it with censorship, because it's way better. People are smart enough to digest information for themselves and make informed decisions when they're exposed to information from a variety of sources. So to fight the wrong speech, you have to basically fight it with right speech. So you fight bad speech with more speech. You don't fight it from limiting the speech. And this has been a tenet of America and American democracy and the American legal system since we were founded. And so I find it, as a lawyer, as a citizen, and now as a, whatever you call me, a podcaster, blog host, show host, whatever, talker, I find it really alarming, because we should be allowed to come onto these platforms that are supposed to be social platforms and talk about stuff. And we should be able to look at videos and say, hey, I saw this video. It's like wild. It it says all this stuff. Can we watch it together and powwow about it? And that should be allowed, right? Like, we're in a free country, aren't we? I don't think we are anymore. So why are we being censored? Why is content being pulled down? If it's not illegal from a constitutional perspective, if it's not obscene and it's not calling to violence, it's not an imminent threat or danger by, yelling fire in a crowded theater is the old, the old famous example of what you can't do, because it would cause a panic in the moment and it might cause people to trample each other to death and stuff. So, like, you're not allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater, right? But you should be able to come online and watch a documentary from actual doctors that have MDs or DOs or PhDs and have devoted years of their lives to building a career and a reputation, publishing articles, or seeing thousands of patients, or being a chiropractor. Like, all of these people are professionals and they're American citizens, and they should have the right to talk and be heard. And if what they're saying is nonsense, if what they're saying doesn't hold up to scrutiny, then it'll fall apart from the weight of its own fallacy or bullshit. Do you see what I'm saying? There's no reason to pull something down and prevent people from seeing it in the first place unless the information might be true or otherwise threatening to someone's agenda who has power. So if they have power, that's what they did at the Politburo. That's what they do in China. If they're threatened by the information, they will silence the speaker. They'll take down the information, and in some cases, they will disappear that person so you never hear from them again. So I want to ask the questions, why are we being censored in America in 2020? Why are doctors not able to speak their minds? Why are people like us in the middle not able to listen to all sides and come up with things ourselves? And then here's a second set of questions. So there was a full court press by the mainstream media today to do what I call pre-bunking. Okay, pre-bunking is kind of like debunking, but pre-bunking will basically assassinate someone's character and their reputation before you even get to hear what they have to say. So you hear all kinds of poisoned stuff about this person or this organization, and you hear all the reasons why listening to them or believing them would be irresponsible of you. So it actually takes peer pressure and other, kind of toxic mind control things, and it puts you in a place where it makes you feel like you're questioning your own responsible behavior by even entertaining thoughts that the powers that be tell you are unpalatable and that you shouldn't pay any attention to. Pay no mind to the man behind the curtain. Remember the Wizard of Oz? So, why? That's the question I have. Why? Why is it so threatening to put up a documentary with a PhD who worked for years and was instrumental in pioneering the treatments for HIV? Why is this person not allowed to talk? Now, if it's true, all of the accusations that have been levied against her, that she stole paperwork or she refused to share credit or she did falsified data. There's all these terrible things that have been said about Dr. Mikovits. But here's what I find really curious, okay? There was a press release today, or an opinion article or something that I saw several people posting on Facebook, which is the article was why it's important to push back on this pandemic movie. And then it has this whole list of talking points that people are reposting and using. So basically, look, when I grew up, the media was an information source. And if you wanted to get information, you went and you read something or you watched something and you learned, and then you made a decision, and then you took some actions in your life. Now, what's happening is they spoon feed you a narrative, and if anyone questions that narrative, then you're called selfish or irresponsible. They are destroyed, okay? Their reputations, their characters, their motives, your motives in wanting to hear it. And so what's happening, I keep starting this sentence and then not quite finishing it. So anyone who's picked up on that, I'm just about to catch up, okay? So what they've done is they've released these talking points to the sheep, and they've said, we need your help in debunking and pre-bunking this movie, this pandemic movie, and why it's important to push back. So they're telling you why you need to be a good soldier for them, why you need to use your divine power as a divine sovereign being, not to push for truth and enlightenment of all, but to squelch the voices of the people you know who are sharing this information. And if somebody posts something on their page, to actually post that whole list of talking points that was disseminated to you, almost as if you are an agent of the Republic, and the Republic issues you your marching orders and your talking points, and then like a good soldier, you go over to social media and you do your armchair warrioring, and you make sure everybody that gets that in video or talks about it is schooled, okay? Because because they told you, just like JP Sears says, they told you what it's like. You're going to believe everything you heard, and now you are their soldier. So now you're doing their bidding. So maybe you're not the type of person that would rat out your friends or snitch on your neighbors or use one of those apps for contact tracing or report my show for showing pandemic. Maybe you're not one of those people, but maybe you are one of those people that when you read the news and you hear something like, hey, it's really important that you push back on this fake information that's being sent around. Maybe you're one of those people that's like, well, yeah, I want to be responsible, and I'm going to go. I have a friend, my friend Ev talks about stuff like that. I'm going to go tell him how irresponsible he is. And so that's fine that you posted that. I love you anyway. But like, all you're doing is doing the indoctrination that they want you to do. And you're like, what you're not asking is the counter question. So me as a lawyer, and again, I don't practice law, but I think like a lawyer, I was trained to. So as a lawyer, I'm going to push back on a stupid question with an insightful question. And I'm going to push back on a stupid set of marching orders with a big ass why question. Why are you giving me those marching orders? And a counter question. So a counter question to the marching orders of why is it important to push back on the Plandemic movie? Here's my question. Why is it important to push back on totalitarianism and authoritarianism? Why is it important? Why? Because they're trying to censor us, okay? So why do you want to censor information that you don't like instead of let people have more speech, okay? So it's like the 1-2 punch. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, they're pulling down videos left and right. Then the marching army of sheep are doing the talking point warrioring of telling people the pre-bunking that you shouldn't listen to this person. So if you do happen to encounter the video, even though it keeps getting taken down, you shouldn't listen to it anyway, because here's all this important information that was served up to me by the media. Okay, so are you getting where I'm coming from? Are you getting it? Okay, because it's like, this is what we're facing, okay? Like, does it matter that they took down my replay? Not really. Like, I might do another one. I might show that a few more times. I will definitely look for a place to put the replay, but it's not really about me. It's about what's happening next. It's about how many questions can we ask? Because the next time they take something down, I'll get one of these Facebook jail things. And then after being online and doing these videos almost daily for the last 2 weeks, you're just going to see it disappear. And if that happens, you'll know that I was put in Facebook jail. So I don't have like one of those fake other pages that if I get jailed, I can go, because it's just too much. If they're going to jail me and I'm off platform, I'm off platform. So what I'm asking my friends, followers, audience, anybody who cares, is to reach out to me through a private message, send me your email address, and let me put you on my email list, because I'm going to start communicating important content more privately. And so the people who care are going to get the information, and the people who are just looky-loos or trying to squelch the speech, in some cases are never going to hear about the information because they don't deserve to. Okay, so, but at the same time, when I'm coming out with stuff that I'm seeing, it's because I want to talk about it. I want to show you. I don't want to be in a vacuum. I want to have either a discussion group about it, or I want to have comments and questions here on the show. And so when content starts to get removed as a civil libertarian and a lawyer, it causes me to look at them as indicators. So if you're following my written posts, you'll see that I'm using a lot of the words indicators lately, and I'm putting it in all caps, indicators, okay? So I'm going to leave you with this tonight. Indicators are what we can look at if we're not sure how something's playing out, okay? So if there's a 50-50 chance, for instance, that this Dr. Mikovits is authentic and telling a real story, or maybe the other 50-50 chance that she is a liar and a cynical manipulator and she's lying to you and nothing she says is true. Okay, so let's just start this little hypothetical with 50-50. Okay, so if it's 50-50, then you have to look at other indicators. Other indicators to me would be freedom versus censorship. Okay, it would be gag orders versus not allowing to speak. So for instance, Dr. Mikovits was under a gag order for 5 years and could not speak. She couldn't even get a lawyer to defend her. Gag orders are, although they're allowed by the courts, I would argue that they are incredibly unconstitutional because they trample on your right to free speech. So a lot of times when you're under investigation or you're fighting for your freedom, you're also under a gag order, which makes it impossible to fight for your freedom or to, gather supporters or to tell people what you're going through, to go on TV and talk about your what you're going through and ask for help and support. It stops from all of that. So this Dr. Mikovits was hidden from the public eye for 5 years, while the people that she's talking about now, Dr. Fauci and others, who she feels are inauthentic and irresponsible and actually promoting bad science and bad recommendations that are not healthy and actually will weaken our immune systems and make us more susceptible to a virus. Not to mention that the vaccine that's being pushed as the end game is going to kill millions of people because there's no vaccine for any type of influenza or coronavirus that's ever been effective. Okay, and there was an NIH study that I showed you, I think in my first show, that people who got the flu shot are far more susceptible of getting COVID-19 or any other respiratory infection, which again, also, if you haven't been following me, I teach breathing to win. And I have some free workshops up in my replays because here's what it's about. If we could be strong and we can use our common sense and we get outside and we breathe fresh air and we get sunshine and exercise and we eat organics or non-pesticide, non-GMO foods and a lot of leafy greens, and we get our vitamins and our minerals and our supplements, and we drink a lot of fluids, and we have a lot of positive human contact, hugs and other loving contact, touch and skin to skin, or, just even hugs, heart to heart. You get the oxytocin, you get the hormones and the chemicals that are really beneficial and help us fight a virus. Now, the coronavirus is a common cold virus, so there's no reason to fear the coronavirus any more than you fear a common cold or a bad cold. And that doesn't mean that a bad cold can't take out an old person or an already sick person. So that's what we're seeing. But the question of censorship remains because indicators show, so gag order is one indicator that shows me that Dr. Mikovits might have a point, because why would they put a gag order on her if they didn't want to shut her mouth? Okay, so that's one indicator. Another indicator is censorship. Why is the Plandemic movie being removed relentlessly from every platform? And even my movie night, where I showed other videos too, and it was a longer discussion, but within the context, I showed the Plandemic movie. Why did they have to take that one out too? So, why are they censoring when they could just be fighting with more speech? So censorship is a big red flag indicator that there is something other than the truth that you're being told. If they were so sure that Dr. Mikovits is wrong and Dr. Fauci is right, they would allow Dr. Mikovits to speak. They wouldn't censor her, and they would have an open debate, and we would decide, each of us, and as a community and as a society, we would move this discussion forward, and it would be more than just a one-way spoon feeding of sheep food, okay? So that's kind of what I wanted to cover tonight. I wanted to kind of just shine some light on what's happening with censorship, with the fear-mongering, with the conditioning of the mindset of you being told that you're selfish for wanting to operate your business and feed your families or help your employees feed their families. There's a lot going on, okay? And so with that said, I think I'm going to call it. I want to say hi to Dawn, Jennifer, Aaron, John Elliott. I'm glad you're here. I don't know, John, part of the reason we watched Plandemic was because you wanted to watch it. And I don't actually remember seeing you on the broadcast last night. Renee, I miss you and I love you. I'm so glad you guys are here. You guys make my whole day worth it. Okay. So I really appreciate you guys for showing up. I'm loving your comments. I'm putting Jennifer's up right here. You are welcome, Jennifer. And there are more comments. Some of them are really long, and I'm not going to be able to read them right now because I'm already over an hour. But Dawn, thank you for your comment. And what I'll do is I'll come on after the live cast, and I'll engage with everyone's comments who comments on this post, okay, including you, Dawn. So thank you for your comments. And let me see, for Michael for his comment. This is just incredible what's happening in America right now. So let me go ahead and start this music so we know that the show is coming to a close. This has been a really interesting week. I don't know what the next week has in store, but we will be back to talk about it. Okay, so I look forward to your messages. Your private messages, send me your emails so I can get you on my email list. And I'm going to be looking through the weekend at possible alternate platforms to put my replays and other content that might get banned. I'm getting some suggestions from that too. So if you know of anything, feel free to hit me up and let me know. I'm looking at a couple of different things right now, so I'll let you know what I come up with. And if I find anything really important to talk about over the weekend, maybe I'll come back tomorrow, Sunday. But otherwise, I'll see you back here on Monday for sure for another episode of Evan Talks, where we will continue to unpack the layers of interesting things that are happening now in America, okay? Is it fascism? Is it totalitarianism? Is it authoritarianism? Is it freedom? No way. It's not freedom. People are being forced out of business, forced to stay in their homes, threatened with arrest, actually arrested. Thankfully, there's a lot of churches that are going to be opening in defiance of governor's orders, and I honor that and respect that very highly. Don't let anyone trample on your freedoms of speech or assembly or worship. Don't comply, okay? And we didn't even get into the mask indoctrination tonight either. Let me just tell you briefly that I was at the supermarket today, and there was a long line of people outdoors in the sunshine in 90-degree weather and the blistering sun wearing full face covering masks. And I thought I was looking at some type of horror movie where people are being indoctrinated. They wouldn't look at each other. Nobody smiles anymore. I like to smile at people and say hi and nod my head. I'm getting a lot of dirty looks because I am brazenly out there without a mask, breathing fresh air and getting sunshine. How selfish of me, right? How selfish. So I hope you get a lot of sunshine and fresh air over the weekend. I'm sending you a big illegal hug with no societal distancing, because that is bullshit too. And I will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. This is Evan out.